Hello and welcome to Your Broken Galaxy. I am Broken, and today I am answering Chico Yasir's question about Luke, but we're gonna say his name is Chad. What if Luke Skywalker was named Chad? What if Luke Skywalker was buff? However you'd want to take it. Let's get started. Okay, so all of the events of the prequel trilogy happen just the same as they did in the movies, except when Padme is giving birth on the asteroid, they hand her a boy and she names him Chad. Leia still goes as Leia and she flies off to Alderaan, becoming a princess. Little Chad is sent to live with his aunt and uncle on Tatooine. Around the time that Chad Skywalker is about 3 years old, he starts developing the traits of a leader. When he is playing with his friends, he has a great deal of confidence. He runs fast, he jumps high, and when he turns 12, he starts to lift. He begs his Uncle Owen for some dumbbells, a barbell, and a workout bench, and he hits it hard. At the age of 16, all of the girls are just totally infatuated with him. He has got them throwing themselves at him like crazy, and his charisma is off the scale. He also got a super dangerous side and wants to start pod racing. But Owen, knowing that if Chad Skywalker wins, it might bring the attention of the Empire since Anakin Skywalker won it just a few years ago. So they fight about it, and Chad ends up accepting his uncle's wishes. Anyway, Chad, who is also a straight A student, ends up going off to the Royal Academy of Naboo under a full-ride scholarship due to his high grades and his track and field ability. Ben Kenobi is like, well, I better tell Bail about this. So he gets on the phone, he calls Bail, and he's like, hey, Chad is going to college. Would you mind sending me some cash so I could get an apartment nearby? And Bale's like, yeah, fine. I mean, I would have paid for a place on Tatooine too, in case you wanted to not live in a hovel. And Ben says, actually, living in a hovel is a long-standing Jedi tradition. So Bale asks, okay, what planet is he going to college on? And Ben says, oh, Naboo. And Bale says, dang it, Ben, do you know how never mind, I'll wire you the money. So Bale gives him some of that sweet, sweet royalty money, and Obi-Wan moves into a run-down one-apartment bedroom half a block down from the school. And when I say run down on Naboo, I mean it's a 1,200 square feet with only one walk-in closet. Anyway, Chad ends up taking the school by storm. He is loved by just everyone with his farm boy charm, absolute stellar athletic ability and build, and he dominates the room with his charisma. Ben is admittedly a little bit jealous, and he's just waiting for the right time to train Chad. In between Chad's freshman and sophomore year, the rebels steal the plan for the D-Star, and Leia ends up flying towards Naboo to contact Obi-Wan. Her dad told him where he was. R2 ends up flying down with C-3PO, and Vader sends down the grunts to find them. Because of the pain of losing Padme, he doesn't want to actually visit Naboo himself, just like he didn't go down to Tatooine himself in the original movie. By the will of the Force, the droids end up landing not too far from Feed and get found by Chad's frat brother, who brings them back to the frat house and tries to turn R2 into a keg. Chad, however, finds out that these droids belong to Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he is like super weirded out and is like, I think that he might be related to that old weirdo that lives in the desert where I'm from. Ben, however, who has planted bugs in the frat house to make sure Chad doesn't get in too much trouble, realizes that he's got to get over there and figure things out. So he walks over, rings the bell, and asks for Chad. And Chad is like, dude, what the heck are you doing here? Did you follow me? Are you stalking me? And Ben is like, Chad, I know your father. And he goes off and tells him that Vader betrayed, ended Anakin, and he asks Chad to drop out of the school and join him in his extremist religious cult, dedicated to taking down the lawful government. And Chad is skeptical, to say the least, but he agrees to talk to the old man, only because Ben gets him a drink at the local pub. They see a news article and find out that the Empire has landed and is conducting searches on Naboo, and Chad says that if they are conducting searches, it'll lead them back to the frat house, and he bolts off running for the fraternity, only to find the charred remains of just dozens and dozens of university's alpha bros lying amidst the burning husk of a building where he once lived. So Chad is like, no, my fraternity. And Ben is like, how about you join the fraternity of the Jedi? And Chad is like, I'll do it for the bros, man. So Chad ends up flying with Obi-Wan back to Tatooine, and he tells his aunt and uncle he is dropping out of school because he found the Jedi religion, and they cut him off financially. So he and Obi-Wan go to Mos Eisley and end up meeting with Han, and Han's like, hey, you look like a tough kid. I could use you on my crew. And Chad is like, yeah, maybe. And it's tense, right? You have the hotshot, cocksure pilot alpha male meeting the sports icon lifting alpha. So Ben is like, look, we need to go to Alderaan. And Han is like, 10,000. And Ben says, 2,000 now, and 15 when we get there. And Chewie, who knows exactly who Obi-Wan is, because he was a famous general in the Clone War, Chewie is sitting there thinking to himself, this right here is how he got the name the Negotiator. Anyway, they agree, and Han shoots Greedo first. They then fly off to Alderaan. On the way, Chad is being taught how to use a lightsaber, but because of his incredible athletic background and training, paired with his innate force ability, he is just doing, like, super good. And Obi-Wan says, you've taken your first steps into a bigger world. So they get to Alderaan, and it is Alderaan, and the D-Star catches them and pulls them in with its little tractor beam, but they still have their little plan to save Leia. Things go about the same as they do in the movie up until Chad opens Leia's cell and she looks at him and says, aren't you a little buff to be a stormtrooper? And Chad takes off his helmet, shakes his golden locks and says, sup, I'm Chad Skywalker and I'm here to rescue you. And Leia says, yeah, that sounds good. Then he says, I'm here with Ben Kenobi. And Leia says, Chad, you had me at sup. Let's go. So they end up in the trash compactor, but instead of having the droid stop it, Chad, like the Chad that he is, teams up with Chewbacca, and they're able to rip the door off the hinges of the trash compactor. They end up getting split up because they're being chased. Chad and Leia are on the little ledge and need to extend the bridge across the cavernous drop. He throws his grappling hook, and Leia grabs him, pulls him close, and gives him a big 5-second kiss and says, for luck. And Chad grabs her and they swing across. They end up making it all the way back to the hangar with the Millennium Falcon and they take off running, and Chad looks over to see his weirdo stalker having an honest-to-goodness laser sword fight with a dark space wizard. Ben looks over at Chad, seeing that he and his sister are together for the first time since they were born, and having a great sense of serenity about how the Force has led them here, decides to allow Vader to strike him down. He lifts his saber, and as Vader's killing blow is flying towards Obi-Wan, his final thoughts are, oh crap, I should have warned him not to get romantically involved with his sister. Vader's strike hits Ben, and Chad is like, not cool, bro. He shoots at the stormtroopers, but then hears Ben's voice saying, run, Chad, run. And he does. They get to the Falcon, fly back to Yavin, have a massive space battle where Chad just shoots down 5 TIE fighters, right? He is immediately made an ace, and he makes way for Jek Tono Porkins to destroy the Death Star. And Chad and Jek both get medals. All the Rebel girls are totally in love with rather Chad or Han. Sorry, Jek, you're a little bit hefty for most of their interest. And the two realize that they are pretty much the cream of the crop. That night after the medal ceremony, Chad is visited by Obi-Wan in a forced ghost vision, and Ben says, hey, I don't want you to ask many questions about this, but just so you know, Leia's your sister. She was adopted, so you know, don't do anything with her. And Chad wakes up and is like, Leia, are you adopted? And she says, why, yes, Chad, I was. And he nods and says, cool, me too. By my aunt and uncle. Anyway, I better get going to win this little rebellion we have going here. So after a couple years, they end up on Hoth, and out of nowhere, Han and Chad are out on patrol, and all of a sudden, Chad is hit by the abominable snowman. However, Chad isn't going to take that challenge like a wannabe beta male. He stands up and ignites his lightsaber and stabs that wampa right in the face. He has the base send them out a ride. They all feast on his dead Tauntaun that night, and he tells the girls at the base about his cool scars that he got getting stitched up and disinfected. While he's getting those stitched up, Leia comes walking in, and Han is like, look, I gotta go. And Chad doesn't know exactly what they're fighting about, but Leia leans down and gives Chad a massive kiss on the lips, and he is like super weirded out by this because he knows they're siblings, but he never told her. Han, on the other hand, is heartbroken because he has been falling for Leia real hard for the last couple years, but she only has eyes for Chad. The next day, the Imperial fleet drops out of hyperspace. There is a big old battle, and Chad ends up taking down 3 AT-ATs by himself. But the base is still overwhelmed, right? So he ends up getting on his X-Wing, and Ben is like, oh, hey, Chad, if you want to get super jacked, you should head to Dagobah and train with Yoda. And Chad is like, that sounds cool. And Ben says, it is, but it's hard work, man. It isn't going to be some adult summer camp. It's going to be running through the woods with a backpack in the rain, just, training like a madman. And Chad is like, Broby-1, dude, you don't have to convince me. I'm already in. So he ends up going to Dagobah, but instead of crashing his X-Wing like a total noob, he safely lands it. And Yoda is like, everything we need has this man. Strong, handsome, young, charismatic. Train him, I will. And Chad is like, sweet. So the next day, Yoda wakes up at 3 in the morning to wake up Chad for a morning run, only to find that Chad has already hunted a massive swamp snake and turned it into a high-protein breakfast after doing a solid 30 minutes of body weight exercises. At the end of 3 months, Chad is like, I can see my sister and Han. They're trapped. And Yoda says, and what of Chewbacca? And Chad says, Did I ever mention Chewie to you? And Yoda says, oh, no, yeah, mention him you did. Not longtime friends are he and I. And Chad says, look, Broda, my man, I gotta save my friends. And Yoda says, complete your training is. Incredible your progress was. Only one last lesson I have for you. And Chad says, hit me up, master. And Yoda says, your father Vader is. And Chad says, no way, man. That is not cool. So he ends up flying off to Cloud City, and he finds Vader waiting. Now, because Porkins was the guy that destroyed the Death Star, his name became famous throughout the galaxy instead of Chad's. But Vader knew there was a Jedi or some other person strong in the Force in the battle that was protecting good old Porker, so he could get off the shot. Vader thinks that this guy that's strong in the Force may be the same guy that Obi-Wan brought with him to save Leia from the Death Star, but he isn't entirely sure. Either way, he's got some confidence that he may be able to turn him to the dark side. So Chad goes walking in, and Vader says, the Force is with you, young Jedi. Chad lights his saber and nods with the smugness that is to be expected of a man of his caliber. They start battling away, and Chad is handling himself well. Vader says, you've learned much, young one. And then Chad kicks Vader right in the crotch and says, you'll find I'm full of surprises. Thankfully for Vader, well, maybe not thankfully, but in this moment, at least, luckily for Vader, he didn't have a great sense of pain from the kick due to the absolute horror that was unleashed on his underparts when Obi-Wan let him horribly, horribly burn on Mustafar. So the two just continue the fight. Your destiny lies with me, Vader says. Chad laughs and says, nah, bro. Vader is able to trip him up and he falls into the freezing chamber, but Chad jumps out so quick, Vader doesn't even have a chance to turn the thing on. Impressive, he says. I know, right? Chad responds. So the two continue their fight, making their way onto the little walkway thing, and Chad is really holding his own, but Vader is still Vader, and he does have a bit of a command in the battle situation. And he says, only your anger can defeat me. But Chad doesn't want to give in because he knows that discipline is the true way to success. Vader backs him up and says, don't make me destroy you. And then Chad looks at Vader and says, join me, and we can end this destructive cycle and take down the Emperor. And Vader responds, I'll never join you, boy. So Chad says, seriously, bro, if you only knew the power of the light side, the Emperor never told you what happened to your son. He told me enough. He told me that he died. And Chad says, no, I am your son. And Vader stops swinging his lightsaber and stares at Chad for a second and says, that really seems possible. I mean, it would totally explain why you are so powerful in the Force. It makes sense that Obi-Wan would have worked quickly to try and save the child because Padme was already full term. Anakin, Chad says. Please. Call me Dad, Vader responds. Dad, you can destroy the Emperor. He has foreseen it. Join me, and together we can save this galaxy as father and son. And Vader says, you know what? I think I will. So Chad says, "Great! My training is complete, as you have seen in our evenly matched battle. So I think that you should take me to the Emperor as though you've captured me, and then hand me the lightsaber and take that loser down." And Vader says, "Jumping right into the action, just like your old man. I like it." So Vader and Chad fly to Coruscant, to the Imperial Palace, and enter the Emperor's chamber. And the Emperor's like, "Guards, leave us." Because the Emperor doesn't care that their one job is to protect him. He wants to have his little dramatic dark side meeting like the drama king that he is. And he's all old and decrepit and everything. And he says, "Young Jedi, you could grow to become more powerful even than Lord Vader under my training. Tell me, what is your name?" So he looks at the Emperor and says, "Chad." And the Emperor smiles. "Chad," he says. And then Chad says, "That's right. Chad Skywalker." And the smile on the Emperor's face turns into a horrible scowl, and Vader tosses Chad his saber. They both ignite them, and Chad says, "Thanks, Dad." And then Vader says, "We'll take him together. You go in slowly on the left." And Chad says, "I'm taking him now." And inside his helmet, Anakin's eyes go wide with worry and fear. And then Chad laughs and says, No, I'm just playing. Obi-Wan told me about how you did that to Dooku. Yeah, totally. Let's take him down together." So the Emperor stands up and shoots lightning at both Vader and Chad, but the combined power of the Skywalkers is just too much. Chad walks forward on the left as Anakin takes the lightning on his blade. When they get close to the Emperor, he stops with his lightning and quickly whips out 2 lightsabers. He swings one high at Chad's head, who ducks and then slices upward, taking the Emperor's wrist. The Emperor then brings the other blade towards Chad, but Vader catches it on his own, does a little flip of the wrist, and takes off the Emperor's other hand, causing his blade to go flying through the air, and it lands in Anakin's hand, and he brings both blades to the Emperor's neck. And Chad says, Good, Dad. Kill him now." And Anakin says, "He must stand trial." So the Emperor gets this confused but slightly happy look on his face, thinking that he may somehow still make it out of this alive. And Chad is like, "Dad, do it." And Anakin laughs and says, "Oh, son, you should have known that I'd have to get you back for that joke you made earlier about going in on the left." Then Anakin slices through Palp's neck and says, "Ah, son, we've done it. We've saved the galaxy." They walk over to each other and clasp their hands awkwardly so as to both be flexing their muscles at the same time. And Chad says, "Oh, by the way, Princess Leia is my twin sister." And Anakin says, "Oh, that's not... I forced her to watch the destruction of her home world. That is going to make for a very awkward Life Day gathering this year." And Chad says, "Don't worry, bro. I'm sure she'll come around. Also, she's kind of in a relationship with Han Solo, I think." And Anakin says, "Oh, dang, I totally tortured him for no reason on Bespin just like a couple days ago. That is not gonna be easily forgiven." So Vader and Chad leave the Imperial Palace. Vader sets himself up as the new Emperor for a few weeks to facilitate a transition of power. Chad ends up becoming the most significant celebrity in the history of the galaxy, being dreamt of by literally trillions of women around the New Republic, and Leia and Han have to sit through horribly awkward holiday celebrations for the rest of their lives. Well, that's my video for today. I hope you guys liked it. As you have probably become aware now, if you're one of my longtime subscribers, my upload schedule is slowing down. I don't plan on quitting this channel, but there's just so much going on in real life that I can't keep up in any degree to what I was doing earlier. So I will keep posting videos, but, you know, it's going to be like 2 or 3 a month probably. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and all that garbage.